Hi YouTube, welcome. This is Kristen Fagan with Free Spirit Beading, and I am just gonna hang out for a few minutes while we get a few more people on here today. I think I'm about a minute or so early. All right, so welcome to Free Spirit Beading. I am Kristen Fagan, and today we are going to talk about knitting on a knitting spool with soft flex beading wire. We're going to make a knitted bangle bracelet. I'm going to go ahead and turn you guys down to my work table and let you know what supplies I have today. Okay. So like I said, I'm with Softflex Company and we create Softflex beading wire. Softflex beading wire is a stainless steel micro braided beading wire that has a color and is nylon coated. So today I'm going to work with the green turquoise color, and I'm using a 30-foot spool, medium 0.019 diameter. To create my knit, I'm going to be using this 5-pin knitting spool. And this is something we also sell at Softflex Company. You can find it at www.softflexcompany.com. So this is the 5-pin. It does come in 3 different sizes, a 3-pin, a 4-pin, and a 5-pin. The difference is really just the size that you're able to knit. And I'm using the 5-pin, it's our largest size, and it's going to allow us to create this large tube that we can then add beads to in the center. So in addition to the wire and the tool, I have a pair of cutters. These are Softflex professional flush cutters. You can use any type of wire cutters for the project. I have a pair of crimping pliers. These are the universal magical crimping pliers. You can also use a pair of pliers like this. And they are the regular crimping pliers. I also have a pair of nylon jaw pliers. We may get to working on the cones, the wrap cones today. If we have enough time, I will be using this tool, and I will be using 22 gauge silver plated pewter Softflex craft wire. If we do run out of time, I will come back here next Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and I'll finish the bracelet with you guys then. So we'll just see how long it takes us to get the knitting part done. I also have a few beads with me. I've got these 6mm pearls. I have this large focal bead from Jessie James Beads. And I have these 2 by 2mm crimp tubes, and that's what we'll be using to hold our design together. We're not going to use a clasp because the knitted wire is stretchy and has some give. It's going to make a bangle bracelet that we could just slide over on our wrist, just like this one I'm wearing today. You can see we can just sort of pull it and it slides right off, and then you can slide it back on. And let me make sure, let me just move my camera down just a smidge more. I don't want to end up beading off camera before I get started. All right, So we're going to start with our soft flex medium wire. Now the amount of wire you are going to want to use is going to vary depending on the design you're working on. The design I'm working on today, I used about 13 feet of soft flex wire, and that created a 5.5-inch knitted tube right here. And I did that because my focal, which is going to be this bead with two pearls on the side, that measures about 1.5 inches. So if that's 1.5 inches and my tube is 5.5 inches, that creates a bracelet approximately 7 inches in size, which works for me. I have a little bit bigger of a wrist. So if you don't need as much knitted part of it, then you can lessen how much wire you use. Or also, if you work on something where your focal is larger, like this bracelet, for example, my focal kind of runs from here all the way to here, giving a lot more space, which means I need a lot less knit. So I would say as long as you have at least 10 feet of beading wire, up to about 15 feet is the range in which you'd be working. And for my design today, I used approximately 13 feet. So to get started, I like to work directly off the spool. And you're going to take one end of your wire, you're going to run it down the center of your knitting spool, and you're going to lift it up. I usually bring it up almost close to the top. You want this area down here to be kind of loose and relaxed. You don't want to pull it super tight. If you pull it tight, you'll end up with more curly cues on the end like I have on this one. So you want to be a little bit loose with it. And I hold it down with my middle finger and my ring finger, just like that. And you only have to hold it in the beginning. So I'll show you that, but this is how I hold it to get it started. So can you see the numbers on my spool? I've got it numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the different pegs. We are going to take our wire and we're going to wrap it counterclockwise around 1, counterclockwise around 5, counterclockwise around 4, around 3, around 2 until we're back in the beginning. And now we're going to use with our left hand, let me do that one more time. And I'm just going to push the wire down on the pins a little lower. So now I'm going to use my index finger on my left hand to hold that wire in place. So I've got these two fingers holding my bottom wire, and I've got my index finger holding my top wire in place. So when you get, and sorry, I'm just gonna do that one more time. So when you get back to 1 and you're holding it down in place, you're gonna have your looped wire on the bottom. See that looped wire down there? And you're gonna have your fresh wire running along top. So now I'm going to take, and the first couple of ones tend to be a little bit trickier. So I'm just gonna take that bottom loop, pull it over, and then I'm gonna tug on this wire that's on the bottom to get my tension. And then I'll just fold it up and hold it again. Twist, take my wire that's loose, the one that's hanging from the spool, put it around the next pin on top of the loop, use my stylus to grab the loop under and over, and then pull it on the bottom again. And now after you get to about 2 pins done, you no longer have to hold that bottom tail. You can let that just be. It's really just the beginning for the first couple of ones, so it doesn't jump off and unravel. So now I have this wire hanging from my spool. I'm gonna go to the next pin, which is number 4, because I'm working counterclockwise. You're gonna pull up that bottom loop, go down, and I lost my tail. All right, so I'm just gonna start that one over again. The first, I would say in the beginning, this is the part that can be the most frustrating because will lose it off your spool a couple of times until you get comfortable with how you're supposed to hold the wire down. So let me give myself a little bit more slack here. So we got that, and now I'm gonna go counterclockwise. One more time around. Push those loops down, and after I get back to one, I'm gonna turn it, hold that one there, and grab this bottom one. Let me make sure. Up and over my loop, pull that tail down. Go to the next one. Use my stylus, pull that up and over the pin, pull that down. Pull it up over the pin, pull it down. 3, and back to 1. So now I've made a complete loop all the way around. When I come to 5 again, I just continue this all the way until I have 5.5 inches. So you're using this, I've totally let go of my tail now that I've done a full loop and I don't have to worry about it popping off. And I'm gonna use this soft flex wire to go on top of this loop here, grab the loop, put it around the pin, pull the tail for your tension. Do the next one, go around the next pin, pull the bottom loop up and around, pull the tail, pull the tail. So I'm going to go ahead and do this for a little while so that I can get enough of a knitted cage to show you how you add the beads to the inside. See, and as you can see, now that I've gotten a few rows, I really just can start going quickly at this point. I'm just doing the same process over and over again. Taking the wire that's connected to my spool, putting it around the pin, grabbing the loop from underneath, pulling it up around the pin, and then pulling my tail for tension. See how that's starting to form down the center there? If you wanted to see some step-by-step instruction on how this process works, especially how you get it started in the beginning with pictures, you can go to softflexcompany.com and click on the School of Design link, which you'll find it at the top, across the top of the page. And within School of Design, there's a section called Tips and Tricks. And in Tips and Tricks, you will find this knitting style, which is called knitting style number 1, as well as 2 other knitting styles. So there's a knitting style number 2 and number 3 that we also have on our website. Okay. So as you continue to knit, eventually your tube is going to start coming out the bottom. And how I figure out when I'm done is I would use a tape measure, and I just measure from the top of the spool down to where I want my knit to be. So in my case, I went down to 5.5 inches for this particular design. So that's how you can check and see, okay, I'm at 3 inches, I'm at 4, and where it is in reference to what you're working on. So once you have your knitted spool and your knitted wire down to the length you want, then you can use beads to drop down the center. And I'll show you how I do that. Again, I'm using a 5-pin knitting spool, and I use 6mm beads to go down the center. So all you have to do is, while it's on your spool, is just drop the beads in there. And you can use the other end of your stylus to kind of poke them down, to push them down to the bottom of your knit. And that's how you end up with beads in the center, like this one. So when you're finished, when you've gotten your knit down to the length that you want it, you've gotten this part from here down to the rest of your knit where you want it, you're gonna go ahead and cut your wire off your spool. I like to leave 4 to 6 inches, just because I like to have enough wire to work with. So you'd cut your wire off your spool, and then you would loosen up your loops on your pin just a little bit, sort of pick them up just a little bit so they're not super tight to the bottom. And so this is where my wire is sticking out here, is on number 2. So I'm going to go into number 1, into that last loop I created. Let's see. And I'm just going to run the wire through that loop, and then you can take that one off the pin. So now that one's connected, and then I go to the next one and I run the wire. And you can use a chain nose plier to help your wire pull through too. And you're going to do this till you have all of your loops with wire through them and off the pin. Sometimes I have to use my chain nose plier to kind of grab the end and just pull it through. And I have one last one to do. Pull that, and then you'll cinch it. And that's sort of what your little end would look like. And now you have just the one strand left to connect to your focal or to connect to your clasp. Yeah, the wire has been used on a, Debbie just said, Deb said she wanted to try the wire to work on a loom. I know that there's a company called Mirix Loom, M-I-R-I-X, and they have used our wire on their loom. I believe they have some examples on their website and on their blog of how they did that. Okay, so Now, when you finish and you have all your beads down the middle and then you went and take your knit cage off, this is what you are left with, is this piece right here. So I'm going to show you guys now how you finish this piece and turn it into a bracelet. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to string a bead on each side. So I have 6mm pearls that I'm just going to put on each side. And then I'm going to string a crimp tube. And this is a 2mm, 2x2mm crimp tube from Softlex Company. If you've never used Softlex Company crimp tubes, they are double the wall thickness of most on the market. They are seamless. They're really strong, high quality crimps. And now I'm going to put this focal bead. So I'm going to string one way. And this bead is a hollow bead, so it'll just take a minute. There we go. String that on that side. And then I'm going to string from the other direction. Pass back through, so you'll have both wires running through this center bead, just like that. I'm going to use a little bead stopper. We carry these as well at Softlex Company. I'm just going to clip one on one side so it doesn't unravel while I am working on the crimp on the other side. So as you see there, I've got my wire coming through. I actually want this wire to go through through the crimp tube as well. Maybe I'll undo my bead stopper so that I can get this wire back through. You want both sides to pass through the focal and then back through the crimp tube. There we go, that's better. And now I'll put the bead stopper there, and I'll do the same on this side. Okay, so that's a little bit more snug of a fit. That's good. So I've got the wires passing from this side through the crimp tube, through the focal bead, back through the crimp tube, and then out. And the wire from this side going in through the crimp tube, through the focal bead, back through that crimp tube, and back out. So to secure it, I'm now going to use my universal magical crimping pliers to crimp this bead between the two beads right there. So this tool has a little notch. It's like a half circle on each side. It's one notch. You place your crimp tube right in the center of that notch, and you give it a good squeeze, and it'll turn your crimp tube into what looks like a little bit of a ravioli shape. Then you'll turn it 90 degrees on its side so the ravioli is up in the chamber on its side. And you'll give it another squeeze. And then you're just going to turn and squeeze a few more times. until you really got that cinched in there. And once that's done, you can go ahead and cut off your excess soft flex wire right up to the crimp. So we've got one side done. I'm going to take off the bead stopper on this side, and I'll just cinch these up a little bit so it's nice and close. And I'm going to do the same thing with this little crimp tube on this side. I'm going to place it inside my magical crimper, give it a squeeze. You just have to make sure your crimp is right in that hole there, right in the center. Another squeeze, and then go around. Tighten that up. And then you'll cut off your excess soft flex wire. So now you've got your knitted bangle, which looks like this. And what I like to do is you can use craft wire to create little messy cones on the end, and that will give your design a finished look, sort of like this one here. Or like this design here, where it's got the colored craft wire. So I had a few colors I brought to my table. I've got the silver plated pewter, I've got blue, and I've got a Pacific blue, all in 22 gauge soft flex craft wire. I think today I'm going to use the pewter to finish off this design. So I'm going to use my measuring tape, and I like to work with a lot of wire. I'm going to go with about 18 inches. Cut off 18 inches. And now I'm going to use the nylon jaw pliers, and I'm just going to run that through the craft wire. And what that will do is just give me a nice clean piece of wire that is been sort of softened and straightened a little bit more than what it looks like when it first comes off the spool. So what I'm going to do here is just poke my wire through, and with my fingers wrap it around one end of my knitted bracelet. And that's sort of on a short wire. I think I poked through about, yeah, I'd say about a ½ inch to an inch. And now I have a really long piece left here, and I'm going to use that to wrap around the rest of this knit. And I'm just wrapping it and pulling it through. And I try and stay a little tighter on one end and get a little looser so that you're really making sort of a cone shape as you get closer to the beads. and then I just flip the side and I go back towards the pearl, tightening it up, and then I go back, trying to cover the knit as much as I can in this area right here. Now I have a little bit left. I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and I'm just going to cinch some of the wire together. Cinch it down, and that again just sort of covers up any areas I might have some wire, some soft flex wire peeking through. And then I'll just finish wrapping again. And when you get to the very end, you just want to push that last piece of wire. You just want to take your chain nose plier and tuck it in so that it's not sticking out. You just run your fingers over it like this and make sure that it's not sticking out anywhere. And there you have it. There is your messy wrap, and that sort of helps to finish this part of your bracelet so it doesn't sort of wonky little ending over on this side. Well, now I'll work on the other side. Again, I did 18 inches. Start one end, use your nylon jaw plier to pull that straight. Take one end of your wire and just poke it through about that much. What is that, about a ½ inch? Wrap it around. You can use your chain nose pliers too on the end to just make sure that last piece is tucked in. And then you take your long end and you just pull it around and just wrap it in a pretty haphazard kind of way. You can do this in a very controlled way too, if you like that look. But I am a little more haphazard, free-spirited. I like to see the messy and the little texture you got in there. I just think it's kind of fun. And then every now and then I'll just use my chain nose pliers and kind of cinch it up a bit. And there you have it. So now I have a knitted bracelet that I could just slide right on. You can wear it with that part showing. You could wear it with that part showing. I hope you guys liked this project today. It was really nice to be here and bead with you and show you this knitted technique. Like I said, you can find everything at softflexcompany.com for this project. You've got Softflex beading wire in green turquoise, the medium .019. This is a 5-pin knitting spool. I'm using the Softflex craft wire, 22 gauge Softflex craft wire in the silver plated pewter color, and 2x2 millimeter crimp tubes. And then I just dropped in 6 millimeter size pearls and use a focal bead from Jessie James Beads. The tools we've got were cutters, chain nose pliers, nylon jaw pliers, and the magic crimper, as well as a little bead stopper I just used before I started crimping. Thank you so much for being here. Let me know if you have any questions in the chat. I'll come back and go through and answer them a little bit later today or tomorrow morning. And I will see you guys here next week. Same time. Bye.